if you're going to go to someone and want to work with them or something, you better be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean, be ready, understand the lingo, understand how to put a deal together. Don't be stumped when they mentioned IO. If they say, oh yeah, well, we could probably do a 5-year IO. You better know what IO means. And I'm not saying it to be a mean guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be a mean guy on the show here. I'm being very realistic. It's one thing I learned in New York City is that when they come at you, you better go hard and you better know what you're talking about. Because if you don't, they will disqualify you immediately and the door's closed. You'll never talk to those people ever again. You know, property managers are, there's so many that go in and out. Part of it is longevity. You don't want to go with anybody that's too big because if they're so big, they just won't keep an eye on your stuff. And if they're too small, then chances are they're probably super terrible. You just don't want to do business with them. There's that. There's also the specialization of the property manager, right? So first you have to understand what they're about. And if, for instance, there's some property management groups here in Cleveland anyway, that only do A-class assets, you should not be calling them to manage your C-class asset in downtown Akron.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that, right? So as an owner, doing the research to match up the right property manager with the right asset, but then understanding what reports do they have? How do they have simple things like, can I log into a site and see where the payments are at? You'd be surprised how many property managers don't even have the basics like that because they don't want to fork over the money for Appfolio
Mm-hmm.
or anything else like that, or they have some crappy homegrown system. And I'm an IT guy. I know you are too.
Mm-hmm.
Developing that type of technology it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's doable, but if you're going to develop your own in-house stuff, it better be good.
Mm-hmm.
It better be good. And if it's not, then we're going to have a problem, right? It all comes down to setting up those relationships early on. And part of what we do is we set up those relationships early on. We manage all of our contacts in our CRM. We track how many times we're calling on them. We do that. Part of it is for us. Part of it is also for compliance as well with the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we try to get an understanding as to what is important to them. What do they want? Because for some people, they love multifamily. And we have multifamily deals, right? We're getting into new construction now. We're going to start getting into triple net leases as well. Triple net leases are super, super boring. However, they throw off very, very predictable cash every single month. It's a monthly distribution because it's predictable, right? So if someone's interested in doing some multifamily, like they love doing value add multifamily because they understand that maybe they won't get the same consistent hit every quarter, but they know when they do a refi, in 3 years, they're going to get a big bump. They don't care about triple net. They want to do a multifamily value add. Mm-hmm. And you have to find the right deals to match up with those investors, right? Mm-hmm. And anyway, so part of what we do is when we dress the part, of course, we go and meet with them. We understand what they're about. We understand what they want. We track all that. We maintain communication with them, right? We put them into our database and we say, hey, we're working on this deal. Just let you know. It's kind of like you're staying at the top of their mind. Mm-hmm. So when one day you actually do have a deal that fits what they're looking for, you can then say, pitch them a deal, right? You say, hey, look, here's a deal we have right now. It's over in West Cleveland. It's 200 units. Here's the expected return. Here's the cash on cash. Here's the IRR. If you're interested, go ahead, hit the portal. If you want to get on a phone call, yada, yada, yada. Then of course, we might do a webinar, get people on a webinar, show them the asset, show them what the upside is, why it's a great deal. And typically that works wonders. It's funny because I grew up to Italian immigrants, right? So I'm Italian. My background's Italian, and my parents are right from Italy. So oftentimes, my father was a laborer. My mother was also worked in a factory. So we grew up with very humble beginnings. And so usually it was my mother cooking every day, cooking for the family, right? And my father would always come home, sit in the exact same place, the head of the table. And before dinner, there would be the pre-dinner, right? So the pre-dinner would consist of prosciutto, mortadella, provolone, all this cheese and all this other stuff that no one should be eating, yet you're having 4 sandwiches before dinner shows up.
That's great.
So yeah, like any Italian family, it's all centered around food. There's a lot of food in the Italian culture. So yeah, for the most part, it was always very busy with eating a lot of food.
That's fantastic. What's a favorite? Do you remember still have favorites that were instilled in you growing up?
Wow. You know what? As a kid, I would eat so we would get these Italian rolls, right from Erie Street, right near where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd always slice it up and we'd put provolone in different cheeses, like 2 or 3 different cheeses in there. And I used to love that. That used to be my favorite thing. That was my favorite thing. The fresh bread, soft bread. Oh my God. It was like heaven.
Now, is this here in Cleveland or is this?
No, this is in Windsor. This is in Windsor. Windsor,
okay.
Ontario, Canada, where I was born and raised. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your childhood. Were you the kid that had entrepreneurial tendencies, growing up? Were you, selling candy or anything like that, or, side job type things, or what was your
yeah, you can say this. So I was the firstborn of 3. And so the thing about being raised to Italian immigrants, that usually the first generations, they usually become entrepreneurs, right? So I'm the only one of the 3 of us that actually went that route, but it all did start from when I was a child. I was the first one to have the lemonade stand, first and only of the 3 of us to have the lemonade stand. I was trying to find different ways to hustle. I had the paper route, all that stuff. But it wasn't until I discovered computers when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. Mm-hmm. I still remember sitting there and someone rolled in a Commodore PET, which most of your listeners won't even know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
Right. It's an old Commodore. You remember the Commodore 64?
That's what I had. Yeah. I remember the 64.
It's older than that.
Okay.
It's 2 generations older than that.
Wow.
It's super old. And, but as soon as I laid eyes on it, I saw that the computer with the green screen and a keyboard. I fell in love. I'm like, I got to learn everything I can about that machine. And that's exactly what I did. I studied everything I could. I watched the TV shows. Back then it was all on TV. There was no internet. And I was committed to learning everything I could about computers. And I was going to own my own computer company. That's what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And that is how it's going to be. And unfortunately, when you grow up to conservative Italian immigrants, they are often afraid of entrepreneurship, mm-hmm. right? They are not big fans of entrepreneurship because to them, entrepreneurship is risky, mm-hmm. right? And in fact, it is not risky. I mean, everything comes with a level of risk, but to me, having experienced both corporate America and the world of entrepreneurship, there are risks in both. But I would rather choose my own direction in life any day of the week before turning it over to some corporate guy who doesn't care anything about me or my family. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know. That's just me. Yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah. So you learned everything you could about computers. Is that what you studied in school? Did you go to college and do that whole route as well?
Yeah. So what I did was in grade school, I was already starting to code by the time I was, by the time I was 10 or 11 years old. I was already writing BASIC. I was already doing all that. I learned, as I said, everything I could. And I even created my own little company, Triple Arrow Softworks. It's my ode to Triple Arrow Softworks right there.
There it is.
And I created that company when I was like 11 or 12. I came with a logo and everything. And I did publish 1 game at 12 years old.
Wow.
But I don't want to digress too far, but this is why the importance of mentors was very important. Because I think if back then I was, say, raised in a place like Silicon Valley or a place where there was a hub for tech, mm-hmm. as opposed to a little town in Canada, my life would have probably been very different. Regardless, for anybody listening, if your child has a knack for tech or something else like that, get them around the right people so they can learn everything they could about it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so what I ended up doing was going to college, going to school for engineering, computer engineering, or rather electrical engineering technology, that kind of thing. And just went the world of tech, basically, mm-hmm. And I was quite successful, did okay. Mm-hmm. I think that the entrepreneurial tendencies really showed well when you're operating at the CIO level, right? Because the expectation from the CEO and the CFO and the rest of the C-level team is that they want to have an entrepreneur lead that group. They don't want to have to micromanage it. So in that sense, being an entrepreneur was very helpful. But the journey from graduation of school to landing that finally good job was rather bumpy, because throughout that journey, there's a lot of crappy companies out there. There's more crappy companies than there are good companies, and bad places to work than there are good places to work, unfortunately. And I think I found every single one of them. Because no matter what, either the company was underfunded, they were not profitable, it was just a terrible place to be, crappy bosses. I can devote 2 podcasts easily on how not to run a company based on these bosses, and it would be totally entertaining. I swear your audience would be laughing and then dropping jaws in disbelief. I'm telling you, it's insane. But anyway, at that company, I ended up doing quite well. But I committed to that company, everything. I was working like a maniac for these guys. But and I also discovered real estate at that same time too. I was still in my early 30s when I was doing that. And so I figured I'll do something with real estate. But the motivation to do real estate was not because I wanted to build wealth or build a legacy or to do any of the reasons that I'm doing it today. Back then, the motivation was, if I get fired, I need to have a backup plan. That was the whole motivation, which is totally messed up.
Yeah, it came from fear rather than
exactly. Yeah. And I think that for many people that are living the corporate, the 40-hour 9-to-5 scenario, they live like that. I mean, I can't be the only one out there. I can't be. I'm sure there's other people that feel the same way. And lo and behold, I mean, I was very successful at this company. I helped them go public. I created technology that was unheard of in the industry, the things that had never been seen before, because I was not an industry guy. I came from manufacturing, not financial services like this company was. And then one day, the boss comes to my office with a box, pack up your crap, you're done, get out. That's it. Wow. And I gave up years of my life for these guys, and they did it to me. They did it to a bunch of other senior executives that have been with the company. Some of them have been there since the beginning, since like the very beginning. Just handing them the box, told them to get lost. And it doesn't matter who you are, and as I said, this was supposedly a good company, and I'm sure they're fine. I listen, where I'm at right now, I have no hard feelings at all. I would rather be doing what I'm doing today than being back at that place. I'll tell you
absolutely.
That 120%.
Yeah, no, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about, you were working your job and you started looking at real estate. What were some of the things that were going through your mind? Obviously you said you wanted to supplement, your income and use it as a fallback, but what were some of those first things that you were looking at? Did you start out in houses? Were you going right into multifamily right away? What were some of those initial thoughts that you were exploring at that point?
Well, back then it was all single family. I didn't even know, multifamily in the sense of, duplexes and fourplexes was probably the extent of it. I didn't even know owning a building was a thing. I had no idea. If I would have known then, my life would have been totally different. But a friend of mine who was the chief operating officer, he told me about buying houses. And at that point, we'd just gone public. We're sitting on mountains of cash. And I'm like, okay, why not? I mean, if that was a decision, why not?
Yeah.
That was it. So not much thought went into it. But he lined me up with his broker, and she helped guide me, so to speak, on some of these deals. Although the broker has her own self-interest. Right. So, I obviously bought all the deals from her, and I paid either retail or close to it, which again, didn't know any of this stuff there. I didn't study no Carlton sheets or anything else like that. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about nothing. Right. I was following what my friend was doing. He was buying houses at retail and renting them out. However, I was very careful with how I applied, how I applied the right financing, and I made sure there's still enough margin. And I also, it's funny because I apply the same sort of rules even to this very day. I still apply the same sort of rules, fixed mortgages, knowing exactly how much is coming in versus how much is covering the mortgage and all the expenses, things like that. But I kind of learned it on my own back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to find as many single family houses as I could,
Mm-hmm.
as many as I could, and it was, it was a lot of fun. And I think that looking back on it now, what I didn't do is I should have spoken to more brokers. I should have done multifamily, but I didn't even know, as I said, that was a thing. I was looking at gas stations. I was looking at
Oh, wow.
I
You're
was
getting
looking at
into
all
everything.
kinds of different businesses. Cause if I'd have known about multifamily back then it would have been an easy thing. I mean, back then we all, like the whole management team, we had tons of money. So it's like, oh, buy a gas station. Oh, well, you have to put $200,000 down. Pff, no problem. Let's go. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
it was not a thing. I didn't know about syndication, raising money, any of that stuff. Didn't even register. And I think even if it did register, I don't know that I would have the wherewithal to even put a deal together like I do
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the thing. It's like, cause it wasn't in my purview. I wasn't even thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. So you had all of these different opportunities that you're bringing together. At what point did you start making the connection to multifamily and that makes more sense? Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it was actually many years later. So
Mm-hmm.
after I left that company, I, you really got to be careful with what people tell you. And when you're working for a company and you have a lot of success and everybody, like you walk down the hall giving you high fives and everybody's loving on you, right? Kind of like, and then they tell you how great you are, kind of let it define you,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden one day, here's the box, get out of here. You're done. You're a piece of crap. You really have to watch what you let into your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I really let it get to me. And it really set me on a path of a really bad path, I should say. Like I was floating around from job to job to job without any focus, without any why. It was just floating around. And and as I pointed out earlier, there's a lot of crappy companies out there. And I ended up at a lot of crappy companies
Mm-hmm.
even afterwards. And I was just trying to find anywhere that would pay me a salary.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I was looking for. And because of that, I would just go from job to job to job. I lived in so many different places. It wasn't even funny, man. It was nuts. I lived in Florida. I lived in New York City. I lived in Buffalo. I lived in Baltimore. I lived in, God, it was terrible. I mean, it was an experience. It was an experience. I shouldn't say it's terrible from the standpoint. I think it's terrible from the standpoint of it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The time is the one thing that we're never going to get back. And every minute that's wasted is another one you'll never, ever be able to reproduce. Right. So it's very important you spend it doing the right things. And I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't surrounded by the right people. I wasn't taking in the right knowledge. I wasn't doing what needed to be done to build success. Many years later, I ended up working at a pretty good company, actually. And when I was working and living in New York, I met up with this guy. He was running a company in Indianapolis. He asked me to come on board as his CIO, so I did. And we had a good run. I was able to take this company, turn it around. I mean, he was largely out of town. He was either operating out of New York or just doing sales basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was running the business through technology and was able to stabilize the environment. Things were going great until one day, the equity firm that owns the company and the CEO that hired me have a falling out. So what does he do? He bounces. New guy comes in. New guy doesn't like me. And you know the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess who gets the box again?
Yeah.
Right. So here I am in my 40s. Right. And I'm in Indianapolis. I just met a girl the day before and who's now my wife. But I met her and they said, well, we're on a second date. Hey, listen, I'm I'm out of here. I'm going to be leaving in a couple of weeks or whatever. I'm going to Michigan, selling off all my houses, going to Virginia, selling everything. I'm selling it all.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what are you going to do? I go, I'm not sure yet. So you're welcome to come along if you want. And she says, okay. She
Wow.
does.
That's
she
fantastic.
does.
That's
And
great.
Yeah, she does. So, so what happened is that I knew I was going to do something in real estate,
Mhm.
but I wasn't focused on it yet. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have that mental shift yet, but I did know, one thing I did know was that I had to do something on my own. I was not cut out to hand my time. The only thing I have left over to someone else that doesn't give a crap about me,
Mhm.
right? Or my family, right? And because you only get once around the ride on this one.
Mhm.
Anyone listening, you only get one shot. This is it. You can, if you want, you can believe what happens in the afterlife and all that stuff. That's super. I don't know what happens in the afterlife, but I do know this. In this current reality that you're living right now, there's only one shot. That's all I know. And I decided that that's what I was going to do. I was going to do something. So I knew that throughout the turmoil that was going on in my life, that small real estate portfolio that I had left, because I sold off a lot of it, it was still making a little bit of money. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to do something in real estate. That's all I do. Something in real estate. And I was talking to a friend of mine, a real estate attorney, and I just happened to be looking. I had the phone to my ear. I'm looking out the window, and I see a building, maybe it might have been, I don't know, 28 unit building or something like that. And I asked him, I go, who owns that? He goes, what do you mean who owns it? I go, like, who owns the building? Like, does a bank own it? Like, does the government own it? Who owns it? He was like, what do you mean? People own it. And I go, what do you mean people? What people? How do they buy it? Syndication. He explains to me the art of raising money, the art of syndicating a deal. He was a real estate attorney, right? And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I will do that. So I was in Virginia when all this happened, and I decided, you know what? I'm selling everything. I literally loaded everything I had left in my truck with my girlfriend at the time, and we drove to Ohio and decided Ohio was going to be the place we're going to do this. I took on a consulting role, my very last consulting role, and I made a promise to her. I said, you know what? This is going to be the last job I ever have. I'm never working for someone else ever again. And it's been like that ever since.
That's fantastic.
It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey, but I will say that it wasn't easy. There could have been a lot more shortcuts I could have taken. I didn't have, I did have virtual mentors and in books and things like that. But I think that if I had a more purposeful mentor and a coach, which I did have in Virginia, by the way, I did have a coach when all that stuff was happening, those discussions, I did get a personal coach, and he was able to help in some way, provide some clarity. But having and surrounding yourself with those people made all the difference. And that's what it was. If I would have done that earlier on, it would have saved me a whole ton of time, like a ton of time.
Yeah. So that would have been your shortcut that you're talking about is reach out to more mentors sooner at that point.
Yeah. But you know what though? It's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I'll get people that reach out to me sometimes, and they have not done the work yet. They're not prepared to be talking yet. You know, they really have to. If you're going to go to someone and want to work with them or something, you better be ready. And what I mean, be ready. Understand the lingo. Understand how to put a deal together. Don't be stumped when they mentioned IO. They say, oh yeah, well, we can probably do a 5-year IO. You better know what IO means. And I'm not saying it to be a mean guy. I'm not trying to be a mean guy on the show here. I'm being very realistic. It's one thing I learned in New York City is that when they come at you, you better go hard, and you better know what you're talking about. Because if you don't, they will disqualify you immediately, and the door's closed. You'll never talk to those people ever again. New Yorkers are still tough in that way. And I learned that. There, and it still stayed with me even to this very day. I'm still very much the same way. But it serves me well. I won't go into a deal half-cocked. I know what's going on all the time.
Yeah.
And anybody reaching out to mentors or anything else like that, you better know your stuff. You got to know your stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about thinking about the first deal that you underwrote and the first deal that you said, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take this down. Where did you get your learnings from? I mean, were you just figuring it out as you go? You mentioned that you had some books that you consumed, but what was your process for evaluating, that first deal and, yes, this is a go, we're going to go after this one?
So it's funny. It's funny. This is a funny story. So, yeah, there's a lot of books I consumed. The Usual Suspects, Robert Kiyosaki, and I also did some stuff with Sam Zell and others, which teach you the more strategic side of things, not so much the tactical side. So back then it was all a lot of podcasts, just listening to people describe how they put deals together, right? And so I started analyzing deals on my own, and I was analyzing maybe 150 to 200 deals a week. And I was looking at deals out of my market, inside my market, anywhere, right? I would just go to LoopNet and just start pulling down a deal, run the numbers. This deal doesn't work. As should be no surprise if anybody's on LoopNet.
Yeah.
But what is a number that would work, right? I mean, I started practicing. I would make the phone calls. I would call the broker and get to know them. Call the brokers outside of my area, and maybe call a broker in California. I would never buy anything in California. I think it's ridiculous. But I would call them and practice. I was doing stuff like that. I was doing the stuff that nobody would ever want to do because they're afraid of getting embarrassed. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was committed to learning this business. And then one day I was practicing my numbers. I had LoopNet up, and there's a deal in Canton, Ohio. And so this is my first big deal, right? And it's funny because a big deal to me is not the same as it was back then. Now, back then it was their asking price was 1.65 million, which today is like tiny, right? It wasn't that long ago either. And my property manager who was managing some small deals for me. He was running this deal, and I said, hey Gary, what's going on with this deal here? It's on LoopNet. He goes, I just fell out of contract 2 hours ago. I said, really? What's the bottom line number? He says 1.465, 1.4 million, basically, right? And I said, send over a PSA. I'll sign it right now. I don't recommend your listeners do any of this stuff, right? But I did it. That's how I did it. So he sends over a PSA. I sign it. I send it back, and I'm like, okay, I gotta find the money for all this.
Exactly.
Now, fortunately, I had an idea as to where I was going to get the lender from. I had enough money for earnest and inspections and things like that. So, but I still have to find the actual equity. So I hit the phones. I made one phone call, and she just hung up on me, which was somewhat surprising. I thought she was very, very nice. I made the second phone call, explained the deal, pitched it to her. She's like, I'm in, let's roll. And that's it.
Wow.
I mean, that was the deal, right? So, I mean, that deal did have a lot of issues. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was not an easy deal, right? It had some issues, mostly because we picked, we used her lender instead of my lender. I think my lender would have pulled it off at a better rate, whatever, water under the bridge at this point. But having your good lender, having a good team in place would have made all the difference in the world, right? That's what it is, right? But at any rate, yeah, I mean, that's how we did it. Again, I don't recommend anyone do it that way unless you're a super, super high action based person and knows how to pull stuff off like that. I don't recommend that. Don't do that.
So you mentioned your team that you were building. Can you talk a little bit about how you scaled your team out? Who was the first person that you really brought on? I mean, obviously there's a relationship with brokers that you're constantly evolving and whatnot, but who else did you include in your early team that has helped you along the way?
Sure. Most people are surprised that the first person that I brought on was a property manager. right? The property manager, a good property manager, they know where the deals are. They typically know who the brokers are because they're usually dealing with them on a regular basis because they're buying and selling properties all the time, and they can get you introductions with those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it's about networking with brokers. And whenever I'd reach out to brokers, I would usually by email and then a phone call. I would do both,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because brokers are busy. They're busy people. They're not sitting around waiting for some newbie's phone call. They're just
Mm-hmm.
not. All right. And but then when they do call you back because you leave the right script and you say the right thing to get their attention, then it's funny. The very first question I'll ask you is, "Who's your property manager?" And you better have a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
If you go with Joe Schmo that was in business 6 months, chances are they'll laugh at you and hang up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my property management company, who still do business with this very day, they've been in business. They've been in this market for over 30 years. So everyone knows who they are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's huge. That is absolutely huge. And then they'll ask you about your lender. So that was my third one is the lender. So your broker, your lender broker is a big part of the team as well, right? So back then I had one group, and I have a different group now. And different lender groups they do different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? The different lenders do different things, and even the brokers do different things. They specialize in various asset classes. So that's why it's like you must have a variety of different lender brokers. Stay in communication with them at all times. Reach out to them. Send them a card, on their birthday
Mm-hmm.
or something, or let them know that you're still alive,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know when you might need them. There's going to be some crazy deal with a lot of hair on it, but you have to take it and turn it around. Maybe it's not a deal for Marcus and Millichap or Meridian, but it's a good deal for your friend in New York that actually
Mm-hmm.
has the capital to pull it off, right? And that's the thing. Not all deals are structured this way, right? So it just depends. But anyway, building those relationships are absolutely key. Those are the three that I started off with anyway. But then of course you have your attorney, your CPA, all those guys right afterwards. But those are the ones I started off with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips? You mentioned a good property manager. And again, I agree. Property managers, you want to find a good one to actually manage your property, but then they have all the other connections as well. Do you have any insight into choosing a good property management company that
Oh man,
you
that's
could
that's a loaded
because that
question.
there is a lot of property management companies out there, obviously. So any advice on going through and trying to weed out the ones that wouldn't necessarily be great working with?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question, man. And I think you chuckle too for the same reason. We know that most property managers they have a reputation of not being good, and it's a level of suck that you want to put up with.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
That's absolutely true. That's very, very true.
How much suck do you want to have in your life? That's basically it. But it's funny because there's so many guys that even students that I've worked with even before they started working with me, and they're wondering why their property manager is not watching their sixplex close enough. I'm like, because it's a sixplex. That's why. They don't care about your sixplex, right? They won't care about your sixplex the way they'll care about my 200 unit right down the street from your sixplex.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, right? Property managers are there's so many that go in and out. Part of it is longevity. You don't want to go with anybody that's too big, because if they're so big, they just won't keep an eye on your stuff. And if they're too small, then chances are they're probably super terrible. You just don't want to do business with them. There's that. There's also the specialization of the property manager, right? So first you have to understand what they're about. And if, for instance, there's some property management groups here in Cleveland anyway, that only do A-class assets, you should not be calling them to manage your C-class asset in downtown Akron.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that, right? So as an owner, doing the research to match up the right property manager with the right asset, but then understanding what reports do they have? How do they have simple things like, can I log into a site and see where the payments are at? you'd be surprised how many property managers don't even have the basics like that, because they don't want to fork over the money for Appfolio
Mm-hmm.
or anything else like that, or they have some crappy homegrown system. And I'm an IT guy. I know you are too.
Mm-hmm.
Developing that type of technology is it's not easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
doable, but if you're going to develop your own in-house stuff, it better be good.
Mm-hmm.
It better be good. And if it's not, then we're going to have a problem, right? Anyway, having access to the reports, getting the references is also a big deal as well. Getting those references and getting understanding of the reputation of that property manager as well. But I mean, there's been property managers that some friends I've worked with. Again, it was a small deal. The property manager, they literally sent someone over there, and then they left the door wide open on a vacant unit and just left. And he just happened to be driving by and he saw it there and he's like, "What's going on here?" They just left it. It's,
Wow.
it's carelessness. So plenty of those guys are out there, right? So it's really of keeping a close eye on them. And I think part of it is it's the same thing as hiring employees. Hire fast, fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
If they suck, get rid of them quickly. Don't hang on to them. Get rid
Mm-hmm.
of them. That's the hard part. It's just finding a good one, though.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
that's toughest part. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you give some advice? Again, you've obviously done quite a few different projects now. Can you give some advice on raising money and how to find people that potentially could be interested in an opportunity? And again, this is very much a relationship based. So this is something that normally happens over a period of time. But can you talk a little bit about your process that you use to, identify outreach and convert that person into a investor?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. It all starts way, way, way before you actually have a deal. So when you're not looking at deals and you're not looking at numbers and you're not networking with people or networking with other entrepreneurs, you are raising money all the time. That is what you're doing. You're going to other types of events. You're trying to find people that might be interested. And it's a very, very long sales cycle, right? You really have to determine what type of asset, if they're even interested in investing, period.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I have a friend of mine. He's got money. He want to invest in real estate. He thinks real estate's too risky, so he invests in penny stocks.
Wow.
I swear to God, that's what he does. Whatever, but that's okay. Different strokes, different folks, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, it takes a very, very long time to do that. So unlike some of the other people that might be listening and there's other gurus saying, "Oh yeah, you just find a deal and just partner up with somebody. Easy as that." No. You could, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say a flat no. I shouldn't say flat no, but it all comes down to setting up those relationships early on. And part of what we do is we set up those relationships early on. We manage all of our contacts in our CRM. We track how many times we're calling on them. We do that. Part of it is for us. Part of it is also for compliance as well with the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we try to get an understanding as to what is important to them. What do they want? Because for some people, they love multifamily. And we have multifamily deals, right? We're getting into new construction now. We're going to be start getting into triple net leases as well. Triple net leases are super, super boring. However, they throw off very, very predictable cash every single month. It's a monthly distribution because it's predictable, right? So if someone's interested in doing some multifamily, like they love doing value add multifamily because they understand that maybe they won't get the same consistent hit every quarter, but they know when they do a refi, in 3 years, they're going to get a big bump. They don't care about triple net. They want to do a multifamily value add. Mm-hmm. And you have to find the right deals to match up with those investors. Right. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so part of what we do is when we dress the part, of course, we go and meet with them. We understand what they're about. We understand what they want. We track all that. We maintain communication with them, right? We put them into our database and we say, "Hey, we're working on this deal. just letting you know. It's kind of like you're staying at the top of their mind. So
Mm-hmm.
in one day you actually do have a deal that fits what they're looking for, you can then say, pitch them a deal, right? Say, hey, look, here's a deal we have right now. It's over in West Cleveland. It's 200 units. Here's the expected return. Here's the cash on cash. Here's the IRR. If you're interested, go ahead, hit the portal. If you want to get on a phone call, yada, yada, yada. Then of course, we might do a webinar, get people on a webinar, show them the asset, show them what the upside is, why it's a great deal. And typically that works wonders,
Mm-hmm.
Usually it works wonders. During a pandemic, it's a little tougher.
Mm-hmm.
For when you're trying to do a $15 million raise, it's a little harder,
Mm-hmm.
but it still works. It still works regardless. Yeah.
So you're going through this process right now where you're raising funds for a project, and we are kind of on the back end of the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen that's different now, changed? Are you changing your approach, strategy at all to the current market conditions? You can talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I think the changes that we're making on our side have really to do with the amount of money that has to get raised, right? So for instance, we're working on a deal right now. It's a small deal, and I think the raise is only going to be, I don't know, $900,000 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, as I said, small deal. And now the lender is asking for like 6 months of IO. And so that means super. So we have to overraise basically to cover that 6 months of IO, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rates are still good. We really have to be careful about who we align with. Everyone should always be careful about the lenders they align with. I mean, I'm lining up with a great lender who have done other deals with in the past. And the reason why I do that is because you don't want to get left at the altar. And we spoke about that in the green room before,
Mm-hmm.
is that the last thing you want to do is connect with someone on LinkedIn, which I get all the time. Hey, you have any deals to send our way? No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm only going to work with people that I know can close a deal. It includes a lender broker. Because
Mm-hmm.
listen, you may raise all the money. Your credit might be fine. Your partners might be fine. But for whatever reason, the lender just doesn't want to perform. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
And no one knows why. At least I'm not going to tell you anyway. And that's why having a track record with that lender and with that broker is absolutely key. But anyway, I think that the capital markets, they're currently going crazy right now. Even now, it's still tough for some people to get financing. But if you can get it, it's really, really good. You can find some really good rates out there. For people that are trying to do smaller deals, which we're not doing. I say smaller deals, less than $1 million. You might be best served looking at a local, at a credit union or a local bank, not a local branch, but a local bank to that building. If you do that, you'll have a better chance of closing the deal, because if the lender likes, like, say for instance, you're doing something in, I don't know, I'll use West Cleveland again, and you're doing maybe a 100-unit apartment building for $3 million or something like that. Maybe there's a credit union right nearby, and they might like the area. You can approach them, maybe use them as a backup. I always say use a broker, pay the extra point, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Pay a broker. It's their job to find you the best price, right? But if you're not into doing that, try to find one that's local to the asset itself. That's another little quick tip there for anybody who's doing deals out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. The triple net leases, what has drawn you to that? Obviously I know that it throws off cash. I guess talk a little bit about what types of assets that would be and what the appeal is to that.
No, the good thing about triple net leases is that it throws off consistent cash flow month over month over month over month. It's guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a corporate guarantee backing it up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not just saying it just because they're saying, oh, it's guaranteed, like they say on TV. No, this is real. It's a real corporate guarantee, right? So, and what I mean by that is when you're doing it's typically, we're targeting like a freestanding Advanced Auto Parts. I use that as the example, or Dollar General, right? It's a publicly traded company. And typically they just lease their space. They don't actually own that space or the parking lot or anything else, right? And they lease it. And people like us or syndicators might actually buy it. We'll buy the building and we lease it back to them. And like I said, they usually put a corporate guarantee behind it. So what that means is that no matter what, they're paying that lease. And if the company, for whatever reason, Dollar General goes out of business, you get paid first before even the shareholders get paid. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And but I mean, the chances of Dollar General going down, even in a pandemic, is slim to none. As far as I think I just heard from a broker friend of mine, their sales are up 23% last quarter. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? It's crazy. So why the appeal? It's slow and it's boring. That's why. It's slow, it's boring, but it works. And for some of my investors, they want that. They want to supplement their, those pops or the pops of a multifamily, but they also want to have a steady income from a triple net. Why not? If I can tell you, okay, man, I'll guarantee you, if you put up $100,000 in equity in this deal, I guarantee that you're going to make $800 a month or $1,000 a month, no matter what. Come hell or high water, $800 a month is coming in that deal. It's not a bad deal. Yeah. Okay, you can live with that, right? It just shows up, and it's secured. It's secured by the corporate, by the corporate guarantee. So it isn't like there's any chance of losing it. Even if there's a fire, the insurance company is going to come in and rebuild it anyway. It's that's the appeal. It's guaranteed money. So if you're an older person, for instance, and you want to have that guaranteed money, and you're not really sure where to put it, and maybe you're sitting on $500,000 with $500K put into a nice triple net deal, that's more than enough to live on.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Do you go through and I guess, are you building relationships with the leasors at this point? So you're reaching out to the Dollar Generals or whoever it is, and building relationships there? Or do you pretty well try to find the property and then you go out and approach the different people that may be interested in that market?
I go after the brokers. There's a whole, it's similar to multifamily. There's a whole different set of brokers that specialize in those types of assets. So fortunately, I get to leverage the notoriety of the Bulletproof cash flow brand. The experience of multifamily gets to come into play here too. And I get access to really good people to help me find the right deals. Right. So, that's basically how we're doing it right now. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. You just mentioned Bulletproof cash flow. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and who that would be best served?
Sure. So Bulletproof cash flow is our media and education platform. And really what it's centered around is three things. It's centered around building the right mindset, building the right sales and marketing chops, and of course, real estate, right? And before all those three things, it's the mindset. The mindset is really where everything begins and everything ends. And why I'm focused so much on that is because if your mindset is not set up properly, if you have hate in your heart, or if you have a lot of fear and disbelief in your capabilities, it's going to be very, very difficult to see success in anything that you do. So that's why we spend quite a bit of time and effort really communicating the importance of building the right mindset and building the right network and the right team around you to make sure that you're set up for success. And then next, of course, is the sales and marketing aspect. And in that has a lot to do with the ability to get out there, go talk to brokers, go talk to sellers, go talk to investors, networking, building all that up is all sales and marketing, all of it. your social media presence, all of that stuff is all social media or social sales and marketing. So we put an emphasis on that. And then finally, of course, the real estate side. And I'm a real big multifamily guy. I strongly believe in multifamily. It's a highly resilient asset. And I also believe in having an extreme focus on what you do, right? So I am by no means like trying to spread myself thin and doing fix and flips and doing houses and doing multifamily and doing all these other things. What I did was I set up and we talked about this, my team years ago to handle the multifamily stuff. It's running, it's operational, it's doing great, super. Now I can focus on doing other things. I mentioned development and the triple net stuff. Development already have a good team already waiting in the wings for us to get this deal closed, and they're going to start developing it. And the triple net stuff, I have partners, I have friends that also work in this business as well. So right now I'm building a team up for that. And unfortunately, there isn't much to do with it. But anyway, on Bulletproof Cash Flow, we're talking about anything to do with real estate and ways to build passive income, right? Or things that support the building of passive income. So it could be anything from multifamily to flipping notes, to maybe you're a current house flipper and you want to get out of that business. We talk to people that have done that, but it's all people that are the best at what they do. So typically in the mindset side, we typically have published authors, TEDx speakers, TED Talk speakers, New York Times bestsellers. Those are the types of people that we have on that show. And on the mindset and sales folks, those are usually the best in breed, people that most of your audience would have at least heard of or know of. And on the same thing with the real estate too. I mean, not everyone has to be famous. What you're trying to do is you're trying to pull out of the entrepreneur the best information they have, and to the ability you can use it in your own life. And that's what we're trying to do. That's the value that we're trying to deliver to the audience.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah, it's always great to learn from people who have been there and done it, and know what you're going through. So
yeah. Even if it's only 1 year ahead, even if they're only 1 year ahead from you, you're like, oh yeah, I never did that. I never thought to even do the XYZ. That's a good idea. I might do that. That kind of thing. Sure.
No, it's fantastic. Well, Agostino, this is great. If people wanted to learn more about you or Bulletproof Cash Flow, what would be the best way to reach out, get in touch with you, learn more about that kind of stuff?
Sure. They can reach out on our Facebook group, bulletproofcashflow.com, or Facebook/bulletproofcashflow.com. Facebook/Bulletproof Cash Flow. Let's try that again. You can also go to the website, bulletproofcashflow.com. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're everywhere. So just reach out. I always love to hear from people.
Love it. No, this is great. I certainly appreciate the time, and looking forward to hearing how some of the triple net stuff works out for you.
It's going to be exciting.
So no, that's great.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Excellent. We will. I'm sure we'll be in touch here in the future, and hopefully we can have you back on the show and learn a little bit more from you.
Yeah, I'd love to share. All right. Thanks.